When this handyman yanked a dirty rag out of a clogged chimney, he thought it was just a piece of trash stuck up there. But when he looked a little closer, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Colin Davidson was the kind of guy who could fix pretty much anything. He had first trained as an electrician and spent years working in that field, but along the way, he'd picked up a ton of other useful skills too. So when one customer mentioned a problem with her chimney, Colin didn't hesitate to offer help. At first, he had only been called out to fix an electrical fault with the elderly woman's main fuse box. But while he was working, they got talking. She told him her open fireplace was filling her house with smoke lately, and she figured something must be blocking the chimney. Colin stuck his head inside to take a look and immediately saw there was no light coming through. Whatever it was, the chimney was completely jammed up. Scratching his head, Colin grabbed a few tools from his van and climbed up onto the roof with his ladders. He took his longest pole and began pushing it down the chimney, hoping he could knock whatever was stuck loose. After a few tries, Colin finally hit something solid and managed to push it free. He heard it fall all the way down the chimney and land inside the empty fireplace below. Feeling pretty satisfied, he made his way back down to see what it was. In the middle of the fireplace was a big ball of blackened trash, all bunched together. It must have been stuck up there for a while, with smoke squeezing past it at first before soot built up around it and sealed everything off. Colin cleaned up the area, packed up his tools, and said goodbye to the very thankful woman before heading back to his van. He always made sure to leave a job neat and tidy. Driving home, Colin unpacked all his gear and tossed the dirty piece of trash into a garbage can in the corner of his garage. He straightened up his things, getting everything ready for another day's work. But just as he was about to head inside, something made him pause. There was something about that ball of trash he couldn't shake. He found himself turning back, feeling this strange pull to take a closer look at it. He pulled the bundle out of the bin and shook off the loose soot, laying it down flat on the workbench in his garage. When he finally got a good look, his eyes went wide. Colin had found what looked like some kind of map. But this wasn't just any map, the kind you'd grab from a store or tourist stand. This one was hand-drawn, and it looked like it had been made a very long time ago. It was definitely a strange find, and even though Colin knew his way around a lot of things, old maps weren't one of them. If he wanted answers, he was going to need help from someone who knew more about this sort of thing. Luckily, Colin had an old friend named Reggie who worked as a historian at a museum not too far away. They hadn't seen each other in a few months, but if anyone could figure this out, it would be Reggie. Colin headed over to the museum, excitement buzzing through him, and handed the mysterious map to his friend. Reggie looked a bit frazzled and busy, but he still made time to sit down with Colin for a coffee and catch up a little. They chatted about life, work, and old times, until finally the conversation drifted toward the strange map Colin had brought. At that point, Reggie stood up, map in hand, and moved over to his workbench. As he carefully unfolded it, he let out a small gasp. His face lit up with curiosity as he leaned in, brushing some of the soot off the surface. The more Reggie studied the map, the wider his eyes got. It was clear he was seeing something really special. Colin, feeling a little impatient now, asked him what he was looking at. But Reggie stayed completely focused, saying nothing. More carefully now, Reggie brushed away even more soot, tracing the old lines and markings with his eyes. His mouth dropped open, but still he didn't say a word. Colin finally tapped him on the shoulder, breaking the heavy silence. Again he asked what Reggie had found. Reggie just shook his head and said he wasn't ready to say. Not until he could be absolutely sure. Though Colin felt a little frustrated, he agreed to let Reggie keep the map for a few days to do some research. Driving home, Colin felt butterflies in his stomach. He didn't have answers yet, but seeing Reggie so worked up about it said a lot. Reggie was usually the calm, steady type. Seeing him this excited made Colin even more eager to find out the truth. It was going to be a long few days of waiting. But even then, Colin could never have imagined the truth about the map. What he was about to learn would change his life forever. While he waited to hear from Reggie, Colin kept busy by doing some research of his own. He spent hours online, looking through hundreds, maybe even thousands, of old maps. He saw modern maps, printed ones, hand-drawn ones, even ones that looked like they belonged to pirates. But none of them looked anything like the one he had pulled from that chimney. The mystery just kept getting bigger in his mind. Thankfully, Colin had plenty of jobs lined up to keep him distracted, because if he hadn't, the waiting would have driven him crazy. A few days later, the call finally came. It was Reggie, and he still sounded a little out of breath with excitement. He told Colin to come down to the museum right away. He had news. Colin jumped into his van and headed straight there. The whole drive, Colin's mind was racing. Part of him worried maybe it wasn't anything important after all, and maybe Reggie was just winding him up. But as soon as he walked into the museum and saw the stunned, thrilled look on his friend's face, he knew something big was coming. Reggie explained that the map Colin had found was actually a priceless historical piece. It dated all the way back to the 17th century and had been hand-drawn by the famous Dutch engraver Gerard Fulk. This wasn't just any map, there were no other copies like it anywhere in the world. Colin, still in shock, asked Reggie if he was absolutely sure. Reggie grinned and nodded, pointing out several tiny details that proved it beyond any doubt. It was an incredible discovery. But there was still one mystery they couldn't solve: how the map had ended up inside that chimney in the first place. That secret would likely stay hidden forever. What they did know was that in the right condition, a collector would pay a fortune for it. Reggie and his team carefully restored the map, bit by bit, until it looked almost brand new. They did an amazing job. Eventually, the map went up for auction, and it sold for several $1,000,000. Colin could hardly believe it. Overnight, his life had changed. He was now wealthier than he had ever dreamed possible. But every now and then, Colin would think back and smile. If he hadn't followed that gut feeling, that priceless map would have ended up in the trash, lost forever. If you enjoyed this incredible true story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts, too. What would you have done if you found something like this? Drop your opinions down in the comments below.